What up, what up, what up? Welcome to another episode of the Hawks Hoops Podcast. I am, of course, your host, Hawk. And it's been a minute, but I'm happy to be back talking hoops with y'all today. We had a couple of things on the docket. Like I said, it's been a while. We're going to touch on a couple of different things around the league, but the main premise of today's episode is, once again, I got to give a shout out to my boy Mario. I put out on my socials, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, of saying I'm recording tonight. Let me know some topics. And he basically was like, give us your thoughts on all the big names that have moved. So all of the trades that happened in the offseason, free agency signings that happened in the offseason. Like, catch us up. We're about 10, 12 games in. Everyone's played at least 10 games. Most teams are around the 11, 12, 13 game mark. And so we're going to just touch on talking about the Celtics. We're going to talk about the Suns. We're going to talk about James Harden, Jordan Poole, the Bucks, the Celtics. So a lot of the big names that we've talked about over the summer, but I got some insights on them. We'll just share what I've been seeing. We're going to talk about Zach LaVine and his trade, his recent reports of a trade request. Truthfully, I don't know if it's actually considered a request or just that they're open to trading him. We're going to talk through some potential trades and honestly why I don't think my Sixers should trade for him. And then lastly, we're going to finish this out with some thoughts on the in-season tournament. I've been enjoying it so far. I like the direction that it's going in. I would love to hear from you guys about your thoughts on the in-season tournament, on whether or not you think it has been or has not been successful. But without further ado, let's go ahead and get into this. Like I said, shout out to my boy Mario. We got some other people that gave us some topics and some ideas, but honestly, all of their topics were ranging from the Jordan Poole clip, which we're going to talk about, some James Harden stuff, Kristaps. A lot of what they were asking about is going to get touched on, but Mario is essentially the one I want to shout out because he gave me this idea. So appreciate you, Mario. Without further ado, let's go ahead and hop into this. I want to start out with Jordan Poole and the Washington Wizards. So as we know, Jordan Poole, Chris Paul basically got traded for each other. And the Wizards are off to a rough start. They're currently 2-10. They lost 5 in a row. And Poole's not looking good. And I think the clip went viral last week. The Washington Wizards were playing the Brooklyn Nets, I believe. And this clip went viral. There was a timeout. And Jordan Poole was frustrated because apparently he was looked off the play before. And he was just not engaged with this timeout at all. Not paying attention to the coaches, wiping his face with towels, throwing the towel. And you could just tell he wasn't paying attention as the coach was calling the play. Coach was ready, like Coach Unseld was ready, calling the play. The rest of the guys are paying attention. At one point, one of Poole's teammates even was like, yo, Poole, pay attention. And he's like, yo, chill out. This is my team. I got this. And he did not know what the play was supposed to be run. He did not know that play. They did not run that play after that timeout correctly. You can see him looking back at the clipboard after coach is like, all right, ready, break. And he's looking confused at the clipboard, trying to figure out what the play was called. He just completely missed it. And he just doesn't look good at all this season. So right now he's averaging 15 points on 27% from three, 39% from the field, 14 shots a game, 6 threes a game. And I know one of the conversations going into this year was, oh, okay, it's going to be a pool party in D.C. Jordan Poole's getting on the team. Some of my boys was telling me he's about to average 30 this season. And I was closer to the 25, 24 mark. But even at that, even with me thinking 30 was a lot, 15 is crazy low. And I think it's not because he's the first option now. I think a lot of the conversation that came and part of my pushback of personally why I didn't think he was going to average 30. And I did think his field goal and shooting percentage splits were going to be, maybe slightly below league average. I was thinking mid 40s from the field, mid 30s from three, 35, 34% from three, something like that, which aren't necessarily great numbers. Wouldn't be as bad as what we're seeing is because part of the argument was, well, now that he's the first option on this team, no longer being able to play off of Steph and use Steph's gravity, the defense is focused on him more. The best defender is guarding him, which makes it harder on him as a player. That's not what's happening here. I get that logic. I really, really do. But that's not what's happening here. What's happening here is Jordan Poole, when he's on the court, he's playing like, and he looks like he's thirsty for his shot. He's playing like he's about to be back on the bench soon. Like he's not playing like he's the starter of this team, and he's not playing with. I don't like to use words like this because they don't really speak to the X's and O's of the game, but he's not playing with poise. He's playing like he's waiting for Steph Curry to come off the bench and him to go back to the bench. His shots are rushed. He's shooting early in the shot clock. It's one pass and then taking a shot. He's not necessarily moving the ball and creating for others. He's not being a playmaker, I'll say. And it's not that I think that personally Jordan Poole was ever a great playmaker, but there were flashes of some solid playmaking the year that the Warriors won the championship. Not necessarily last year. I didn't see that from him. But the year the Warriors won the championship in the 2022 season, Jordan Poole showed flashes of playmaking, and I was hoping to see more of that on this Wizards team. We're not seeing that. He's turning the ball over. He's not looking, as weird as it sounds, he's not taking confident shots. He's not, and maybe it is confident shots. Maybe that's the problem. He has too much confidence, but he's not taking shots that look good. He's taking rush shots, he's taking shots early in the shot clock. And the weirdest part about it, I don't know if it's a disrespecting the coach thing. Like, I don't know if he doesn't respect the coach. I'm not trying to try to think of what's going on in his head. And the only reason I'm bringing the coach part of it up is mainly because of how viral that timeout clip went that we just talked about. The fact that he wasn't paying attention to the coach at all during timeout makes me want to believe he might not respect that coach as much as he respected as somebody like Steve Kerr, which Steve Kerr's coaching ability is constantly brought up in the question, but he at least has some rings to back up his success, I'll say. Wes Unseld's this is only his third year as a head coach. It's a new head coach. They haven't really won a lot. The Wizards haven't been good the last 3 seasons. So Poole might be like, yo, I know what I'm doing here. Like, I'm doing my thing, but it's not looking good. Now, am I saying it's going to continue like this all season long? Not necessarily. I think he has to decide to take better shots. I don't think it's a coaching scheme thing that they can figure out. I don't think it's the defense that's forcing him to take these really, really tough shots. He has to just decide to take better shots. His shot selection is horrible. That's what honestly, all this Jordan Poole situation comes down to, simply that. His shot selection is horrible. I'll be honest. I haven't watched a ton of Wizards games. And I don't expect you listening or watching this to have watched a ton of Wizards games either. They're not an entertaining team to watch right now. But do yourself a favor, just so you can see what I'm talking about. Go to NBA.com. Go to whatever Jordan Poole's last game was. Go to the box score and just click field goals attempted. And just watch the shots he's taking. NBA.com does this great thing where you can watch a specific stat. You can just go and watch his field goal attempts taken. And look at the shot clock when he's taking these shots. Look at where he's taking these shots. Look at all the contested twos he's putting up. Look at the threes that he's putting up. He's not taking smart shots. And the nasty part about this is, and like I said, I haven't watched a ton of Wizards, but the nasty part about all of this, Kyle Kuzma's playing decent. 23 points a game, 35% from the three, 46% from the field, 20 shots, but only 2 turnovers a game. I'm not saying the Wizards are going to decide to blow this up or going to decide to just give up on whatever this is. But you could probably get a draft pick for Kyle Kuzma. You probably can get at least a draft pick and an expiring contract and go from there for Kyle Kuzma. I don't know if they're going to do that. I don't know if that's the direction they want to go. Maybe they want to. It's a long season. Like I said, we're 13 games in. I'm telling you now, you're going to hear me say some things. You're going to hear me say that a lot. It's a long season. We're 13 games in. We're not even a quarter of the way into the season. So to a little bit, what people say in these first couple of games are going to be not a legitimate overreaction, but it's going to be some overreaction-esque feelings here, because I don't want to say Wizards need to blow this up. This isn't going to work. Trade Kyle Kuzma, continue your blow up, start the rebuild. Because truthfully, to an extent, they're in this rebuild right now. But you got Kuzma, you got Poole. On theory, in 2K, they're good, young, talented players. Kyle Kuzma's playing great. You can get a draft pick for him. Poole's not playing great right now, but I don't think these first 12 games that we've seen from Kyle Kuzma is exactly what we're going to see for the next 70 games. We'll see. I could be wrong, but I think he's going to figure it out. I want to switch gears. That's enough about the Wizards. Like I said, just watch their highlights. Go to NBA.com, watch the 10-minute recap. I'm not telling you to watch a Wizards game. It's not going to be enjoyable. I want to talk about the Clippers. They traded for James Harden. They finally got a win in the James Harden era. He hit that game winner. They were in a really close game against the Rockets. He hit a game winner with about 10 seconds left. Actually, it was about 7 seconds left. And it was interesting, something specific about that game winner. Close game against the Rockets, up and down game for most of the game. Kawhi has the ball on the about right wing, or almost in between the wing and the corner, I'll say, whatever you want to call that spot on the floor, on the right side of the court. About 11 seconds left, he has it. He looks like he goes for a hesitation shot fake. The defender defends it well. Kawhi passes to Harden. Harden hits a step back 3. And Then it turns into the foul game. Clippers ended up winning. He knocks that three down with 7 seconds left. The Rockets don't score again. That's why I'm calling it the game winner. The Clippers haven't looked good. It's not necessarily I guess I don't want to say a surprise, but it's not a secret is the word I'm looking for. The Clippers simply haven't looked good. They're 4-7. They're 3-7 in their last 10. Clippers are they're 3-7 in the last 10, and they only had one other game that they won before that because they've only played 11 games. I didn't peep; they only played 11 games. Before this last win, I want to say they were 5 losses in a row. And for me, I've talked about this before. I made a TikTok about this like a week ago. For me, what it comes down to for the Clippers, they don't have guys who want to play the role player-esque part. Now, a report came out recently that Russell Westbrook volunteered to come off the bench. A lot of people were commending him for that on Twitter, saying like, shout out to him for being the bigger person and wanting to come off the bench and trying to do something to help this team figure it out. And coincidentally, they won that game that he came off the bench. It was a close game, but they won that game. A lot of people are putting this on James Harden because, the losing streak started once he got there. They lost 5 in a row once he got there. I see the thought process of blaming it on James Harden. I don't know if I fully blame this on James Harden because, like I said this before. For me, the problem with the Clippers when I watch them, it's a lot of my turn, then your turn, then his turn, then his turn. At least when all 4 of the guys are on the floor. Part of the reason that I'll say it, did not want Russell Westbrook to come off the bench. I preferred the idea of James Harden coming off the bench is Russell Westbrook did that role player stuff that I think Kawhi and Paul George need on the court for it to work together. They need a guy who's going to be cutting back door. They need a guy who's going to catch and shoot. Now, Russ isn't a great catch and shoot player, but he catch it, he going to let it fly. If he's in the corner and he catch it, he going to let it fly. He's a little slightly below league average from that corner. You get him at the top of the key, it's a little bit worse. But in that corner, I'll live with Russell Westbrook shooting corner threes on a catch and shoot situation if he's wide open. The problem, though, with Russ coming off the bench and James Harden in the starting lineup, in my mind, and I'll admit I didn't watch a ton of that Rockets game. We're going to have to see how the rest of this goes. But at least what we've seen from Harden so far in these games with the Clippers, he doesn't move off the ball. We know he's not. He's admitted that he's not used to taking catch and shoot threes. We saw that one that went viral where he caught the ball on. It was a swing. It was a kick out. He's wide open. He doesn't shoot. He dribbles, puts the ball down, step backs, goes to shoot, and then gets blocked. Like he waited for the defender to get there because he's not used to catch and shoot situations. And then he said it a couple days later. He's like, I'm just simply not used to that. I got to get used to shooting the ball in the catch and shoot situations. He even said, I'm not in James Harden shape. It's going to take a while to get into James Harden shape. Ty Lue said that give him 10 games. Like give this team 10 games with James Harden. Personally, I think it's going to take a little bit longer than 10 games. But I'm not willing to throw away the idea of this team working. Because on paper, like if you boot this once again, I love the NBA because the NBA is a league where on paper certain teams just make sense, but you have to watch it and figure it out, and the players have to actually figure out how to work together and make it work. On paper, I like the idea of this Clippers team. I do. They are small. Yes, they're going to miss Plumlee. They have to figure out the James Harden Zubac pick and roll. They have to do more of that. It has to work better because. And the reason I say they have to do more of that is if you're going to put James Harden in a starting lineup, you have to an extent, accommodate his style of play. And as much as people don't like that phrasing or like that word because you think James Harden style of play, you think dribble the heck out of the basketball, James Harden is still one of the best pick and roll guards in the league. His pick and roll, scoring out of the pick and roll, but more so passing and hitting the roller with pocket passes, dump passes, bounce passes. He's a great passer in the pick and roll. Clippers haven't run a lot of that, but also Zubac. I love Zubac's game because he's a big body. He rebounds well. He's not the ideal pick and roll partner for James Harden in my mind. To me, that's Mason Plumlee, but unfortunately, he's injured right now. And I think the Clippers some reports are coming out that the Clippers have been interested in looking around the league for some other bigs and just seeing what's available. So we'll see what they do and maybe, the next coming weeks to see if they try to find a replacement for Plumlee. But I can't let this one guy off the hook. We talked about Harden. We talked about Russ. I still think And the other reason I'll say before I get to this next person, the other reason I think it should be Russ in the starting lineup and Harden off the bench. We talked about Russ does the role player stuff. He's going to cut back door. He's going to rebound. He's going to run hard. He's going to do that role player stuff that truthfully we haven't seen James Harden do. Just straight up. He's better at times. He's saying he needs to, be willing and ready to catch and shoot. But I can't tell you the last time I saw James Harden cut to the basket. If James Harden doesn't have the ball, he might be ready to catch and shoot, but he's still only on the three-point line. He's not cutting to the basket. He's not going to be the one setting a pin down screen. Like Russ does that does that stuff. That's why I would like him in the starting lineup alongside PG and Kawhi. But the other part is you can let Harden be Harden if he's running the second unit. I like the idea of Harden being Harden fully more than I like the idea of Russ being Russ. And I love Russ, but the lack of shooting, the way Russ operates and what he looks best in, the type of unit he looks best in is a unit with a lot of spacing. You'll have that if he's on the court with PG, Kawhi, Norm Powell, him, and Zubac. Like between Powell, Kawhi, and PG, they can knock down the ball with a pretty high clip. With the second unit guys, it's just the spacing isn't as great for Russell Westbrook. But with the second unit guys and James Harden, he has the ability it has the freedom, I should more so say, to have the ball in his hands more, to run more pick and rolls, to dribble the ball more, and get more into his rhythm and play his style of basketball a little bit more. But the main piece, and I think the piece that I think is being overlooked by a lot of people because James Harden is the new person here, Russell Westbrook has had a tumultuous last couple of years. Kawhi Leonard is not being talked about enough in my mind. He's not playing bad. Kawhi's not having a bad season. I thought I had it written down. But mainly my problem is Kawhi so far this season, it looks too passive. Right now this season, Kawhi is averaging 21 points, which ain't bad, on 43% from the three, which is amazing. 46% from the field, which is solid. But my thing is for Kawhi, he has way too many nights so far where it's 12 shot attempts, 13 shot attempts, 11 shot attempts, 14 shot attempts. And right now he's averaging 16 shot attempts. But in previous years, and the pushback could be, well, you don't want Kawhi to have to do all that because when you have Kawhi do all that, then he gets injured. And now, he's trying to load manage his body and play all 82. So he's taking his foot off the gas a little bit. There are times on the court when Kawhi looks like a role player. And that's the exact opposite direction I think they need to go in. Paul George has started out the season really, really good. Around game 7, 8, 9, during that losing streak, he had some rough games in there. But Kawhi just looks too much like a role player to me. And it's not every night. Like I said, 21 points a game. You don't stumble into 21 a game. 21 a game is still 21 a game. But in a league where, we'll talk about it later, but in a league where up until the first 8 games of the season, Kelly Oubre was averaging 20. Like those, to an extent, are role player numbers. Kawhi, you're not a role player. You need to look like the best player on this team for this team to win games, mainly because they need to get used to you being the best player, because I don't think if you stay at this 21 a game, say the Clippers get into the playoffs they look real bad right now, but say they stumble into either the play-in or they walk in like a 6 seed, and then they try to make this switch to have Kawhi be the go-to guy, it's just not going to work out well. They need to figure this out now. Kawhi has to look like himself now. And once again, I don't want to make it seem like I'm saying Kawhi looks bad. I just think there are too many nights where he looks passive. And there are too many nights when he looks passive, especially during that losing streak, when no one else's shot is going either. So Kawhi, stop passing the ball, take it over, and do your thing. And I get it to an extent, and that's why I say sometimes this team, and I feel like I'm rambling here, so let me get concise with this. Watching Kawhi play like a role player is the reason why I say this team looks like your turn, my turn, his turn, his turn. Because the reason Kawhi looks like a role player sometimes is because it'll be 4 or 5 possessions in a row where it's not his turn. And when it's not his turn, he's in a corner, he's setting the screen, like he's not involved in the action. This team has too much talent for it to be my turn, your turn, his turn. Everybody has to be involved in the action to force the defense to guard everybody. When you're letting defenses get off by not having to really guard Kawhi because he's standing in a corner for 3, 4 possessions in a row, you're making it too easy on him. And I think that's my biggest problem with the Clippers. I say it's your turn, my turn, your turn, my turn, because they're not forcing the defense to guard everybody all the time, because there's not ball movement, there's not player movement, there's not a intricate scheme in watching this offense. And you can, I don't know, maybe you can make the argument the Clippers haven't had an intricate scheme in their offense in a while. That's part of the reason why I think they did trade for James Harden, because one of the conversations around the Clippers ever since Kawhi and Paul George got there is they need a playmaking guard. A lot of people felt that role was filled with Russell Westbrook, and I think Russ was great for them in the playoffs and started off this season pretty good. But clearly, they didn't necessarily think Russ filled that playmaking guard role that they wanted, and we'll see if James Harden can. All right, shifting gears, I want to talk about the Milwaukee Bucks. Have conflicted feelings about the Bucks because on paper they're 9-3. They are third in the Eastern Conference right now, I want to say. By all normal metrics, you would say the Bucks look good, the Bucks are doing well, the Bucks are doing fine. And while yes, they are. Don't think I'm about to say I don't like what I'm seeing from the Bucks or anything like that. I just think when I watch the Bucks, they're 9-4. Excuse me, they are third in the West. Third in the East, but they are 9-4 currently. I think things should be a little easier for the Bucks, offensively at least. Defensively, they look a little worse than I was expecting. I know one of the big things was, they're going to miss Drew's defense. Dame isn't really a good defender. And it's not so much that Dame is getting killed. Yes, people are still trying to seek out Dame in pick and roll situations. We saw that a little bit with Luka and Kyrie in their last game, seeking out Damian Lillard. But the Bucks are trying to do a good job of putting Dame on the worst offensive player, that type of stuff. Wesley Matthews was low-key getting torched, and they're asking him to be the point of attack defender, which isn't necessarily something that he's been known for throughout his career. When me and my wife were watching the Dallas Bucks game, what was that, just last night? Yeah, Saturday night. Down the stretch of that game, Wesley Matthews is guarding Luka, and you see Wesley Matthews getting in stance. I mean, he is low, hands wide, really getting in stance. And it's simple pick and roll, Luka 3, cash, simple pick, Luka getting to the basket, that floater he likes right below the free throw line, got all the way to the basket, got fouled once. It was literally 3 pick and rolls in a row. One was kick out to corner 3, one was a Luka floater, and one was a Luka 3. And I'm watching, and I'm like, Dax, they missed Drew Holiday. And it's not necessarily for the offense, obviously. We'll talk about the offense of Dame and Giannis in a second, but I want to focus on his defense right now. But they miss Drew Holiday's screen navigation. The Bucks were one of the best defenses in the league these past couple of years. Like, they're known to be this great defense. Right now, they are the 22nd best defense in the league, which really means they're bottom 10 in defense. There's only 7 defenses worse than them, 8 defenses worse than them. They are 23rd in opponent points that they give up. They're bottom 10 in points, but they're 6th in offensive rating, and they're top 5 in points per game. The offense is flowing. They're struggling to defend at the point of attack against guards. Now, when it's against wings and stuff like that, I'm very curious if down the stretch of games, when we get to the playoffs, if you'll look up and see a situation where Giannis is guarding the point of attack or guarding the best perimeter player on the opposite team. But they really, I think, have to figure out what their pick and roll coverage is going to look like. They're used to running a lot of drop. Brook Lopez is used to running drop, but part of that is because you had the luxury of Drew Holiday's excellent screen navigation. And if you're not familiar with that term or what I mean by that, essentially is his ability to get around screens, his ability to make the screen null and void and blow up the play. Like, Drew Holiday is one of the best in the league at blowing up pick and roll plays. He just is. They don't have that luxury anymore. The Bucks are still trying and enjoying that drop coverage that they like so much. And at times they're getting torched on the pick and roll. Like I said, it's not the end of the world because they're 9-4, but it is only 13 games into the league. So we'll see. I'm curious to see how that defense and what some of the adjustments that Adrian Griffin makes on the defensive side of the ball. But in the same breath, I just said, top 5 in points per game, 6th in the league in offensive rating. I don't love watching the Bucks offense. In the beginning of the season, it felt like Giannis and Dame couldn't both have a good game together. You could tell they were still figuring out how to play together. And over the last couple of games, it has looked better. Admittedly, it has looked better. You can also make the argument it has looked better, though, because over their last couple of games, they haven't played amazing competition. They played outside of Dallas. They played the Hornets. They played Chicago. They played Orlando. They won against Toronto. Toronto, I would say, like a mid-level team. But they started to figure it out against, like, the bottom half of the competition. My biggest thing with the Bucks that's partially frustrating and partially confusing, and I was telling my wife this when we were watching that game, I don't know why the Bucks don't run more pick and rolls. Now, I didn't look up the numbers. I apologize. I didn't look up the numbers to see exactly how many pick and rolls they're doing and what their pick and roll exact numbers look like in comparison to the rest of the league. But next time you watch a Bucks game or just a quarter of Bucks play and Giannis and Dame are on the court together, just pay attention to how many pick and rolls they run. Because it's not many. And when they do run one, you're like, that was easy. Like, once again, down the stretch in that fourth quarter of that game, and I get it, maybe it was different, and I really started to notice it in the second half. We were watching the whole game, but I started paying attention to it in that third and fourth quarter. Like, I don't feel like they're running a lot of pick and rolls, because they weren't. It was Giannis with the ball at the top of the key, or Giannis in the post, which specifically in that Dallas game was very effective. I think he had 40 in that game. He was killing them in the post. He had 18 points in the paint in the third quarter. Like, he was killing them in the paint. So I wasn't mad at that. Don't get that twisted. I wasn't mad at that. The instances where I thought a pick and roll would have been beneficial and useful were it's Dame dribbling at the top of the key and Giannis is standing on the wing. That happened way more plays than I would like to see. Giannis, go set that screen. Dame, tell Giannis to come over here and set that screen. Y'all in the pick and roll should be unstoppable. One of the things that we were talking about over all summer when that trade happened, when you moved there, was the idea of a Dame Giannis pick and roll being unstoppable. Honestly, to the level of what James Harden and Joel Embiid pick and roll looked like last year. That's the type of potential. Joel Embiid and James Harden had the best pick and roll in the league last year. Dame and Giannis had that same potential to be the exact same thing. Honestly, maybe if not a little bit better, because Dame is a better player than Harden was last year. But they don't do it that much. And I don't know if it's an Adrian Griffin thing I was telling my wife this. I feel like Chance the Rapper right now as much time as I said I was telling my wife. I don't know if it's Adrian Griffin wanting to try different things, which I would understand to an extent, or do different wrinkles in their offense of just trying stuff that they might need later on in the season or need in the postseason, seeing what different looks look like. Seeing how the guys fit with Dame and just giving an opportunity to feel it out. And like I said, I don't want to feel like it's nitpicking too much because they're 9-4. They're third in the East. They're winning games. Just run a couple more pick and rolls, and I think you guys could be 10-3, 11-2. And I just want to see them on more pick and rolls. I don't really have any other words. I want to see them run more pick and rolls. I think they're figuring out how to play together more and more. There are times, I think, when And I don't want to think too deep into this because it happens on almost any team. You'll see it all the time. But it's just, you notice it more when it's a new player. There are times when it looks like Dame's calling for the ball and it feels like Giannis is looking him off and Dame's calling for the ball in the wing. Giannis had the ball at the top of the quarter and he had Bobby Portis for in the corner. Bobby Portis pump fake, drove to the basket and went to shoot a floater and went over the rim. So they feel like times when they don't mesh. I don't know if I'm thinking too deep into it. It don't always look like they're loving playing together, as weird as that sounds, but it just could be a personality thing. That really just could be a personality thing. I could be overthinking it. I'm looking forward to seeing more of their games. Once again, this feels like nitpicking. It's early in the season. They've played 12 games. They got 70 left. 9-4, excuse me. They've played 14 games, 13 games, 69 left. And I'm laughing because I just realized I saw a clip this morning when the reporters was like telling Giannis how many games he had left. He's like, 69 games left. I like that number. Shout out to the Greek feet. All right, let's switch gears and talk about the Warriors side of the Chris Paul Jordan Poole trade. Talked about the Wizards, talked about Poole. Let's talk about the Warriors. Let's talk about Chris Paul. First off, I want to give a shout out to Steph Curry. Steph Curry, if you haven't been watching Warriors basketball, and I'm not even going to lie to you, if you haven't been, I wouldn't be too mad at you. But Steph Curry still looks amazing. Still looks like Steph. Steph Curry right now is averaging 30 a game, 44% from three, which I don't know if he'll keep this up. That's not even a career high, which is crazy. He has a season where he went 45% from three. But 44% from three is looking absolutely fantastic. But the reason the Warriors aren't winning games is because no one else on that team looks good. As simple as that. Not even no one else looks fantastic. No one else looks great. No one else looks amazing. No one else on this Warriors team looks good. Andrew Wiggins looks bad. He's 12 points a game, down from 17, 18 points last year. The last couple of years, excuse me. The defense isn't what it used to be. The rebounding isn't what it used to be. I am very surprised that Andrew Wiggins started out the way he started out. Mainly because the way Andrew Wiggins has played in years past with the Warriors, it hasn't necessarily been a, let me go get mine type player. He kind of get in there how he fit in. He knocked out open shots. He cuts. He defends. And then every now and then, when it's 7 seconds left on the shot clock and they need somebody to create something and Steph don't got the ball in his hands, they've been able to give it to Wiggins, and he can knock down either a nice little midi, get to the basket, use his size. We haven't seen that from him yet. He looks absolutely horrible. And it's mainly because the defense and rebounding have been so bad. Especially considering his team desperately needs defense and rebounding because they're so small. So he has to play bigger than he is, and it's not happening. Klay Thompson doesn't look the same. Like, he just don't. 14 points a game, 33% from three. We know the defense isn't what it used to be. But he just don't look good. No one on this team looks good. Like, I don't like watching Warriors basketball. And I don't want it to turn into a rant, but I'm really not enjoying watching Warriors basketball that much. And I'm giving them a benefit of the doubt only because it's early. Specifically, Klay. Wiggins, I got to figure out what's going on with Wiggins a little bit more. But Klay Thompson started out bad last year as well. We were saying all these same things about Klay Thompson last year as well. In his first 10 games in the season last year, he was 32% from three on 9 attempts a game. He ended that season 41% from three on 10 attempts a game. Right now, he's 33% from three. I don't think Klay Thompson's going to stay at 33% from three. I don't know if he's going to get to the 41 like he did last year, but I don't think he's going to stay at 41% from three. But let's talk about the Chris Paul side of this, and then I got some thoughts on what the future of the Warriors could potentially look like. Chris Paul's looks solid. I think he's proven that he's still a great playmaker. He's proven that he still can have the ball on the string. He has definitely changed the way this Warriors team plays basketball, and I think that could partially lead into why some of the guys don't look as good as they normally do. This is a Warriors team over the past couple of years, at least when they've been good and healthy, they're like top 3 in pace. They get up and down the court. They have a lot of possessions. We know the Warriors be turning the ball over, and part of that high turnover rate that we're used to from the Golden State Warriors is because they play so fast. Now the turnovers are down, and surprisingly they're winning on the road. They've won more road games than they've won home games, and we all know they struggled to win on the road last year. But part of that, what comes with Chris Paul being on your team, is a slower pace. They're like middle of the pack in pace. They're trying to carry the ball. They're winning on the road. But we're seeing the Chris Paul effect, and I haven't been able to determine if that's a good or bad thing that this team is playing slower than they're used to. Maybe Wiggins ain't looking good because he's used to getting up and down the court and getting some of those easy fast break lays. Wiggins was one of the guys that if, they're out on a break and they're moving quickly, Wiggins is one of the guys that's moving up the court, trying to get to the basket, trying to get easy dunk, get an easy lay. Maybe he's missing some of those looks because Chris is slowing it down a little bit more. It's ebb and flows, it's give and take. Chris Paul still proving he can get to that midi. He's not shooting the ball well from three, like at all right this season. He is not shooting the ball well at all. The jury's not out. I like the idea of him coming off the bench and running the second unit, but a part of what's going to make him running that second unit successful is guys have to knock down the open shots, and the Warriors simply aren't knocking down open shots right now. This is what I meant to say earlier. I saw a tweet. I don't remember if it was a tweet or it was a podcast, but essentially the quote was, the Warriors are no longer a great shooting team. They just have a great shooter on this team. And I don't know if I'm willing to go that far yet because Klay is still there, but like we said, Klay's not playing or shooting the ball well. But as of right now, that's true. The Warriors aren't a great shooting team. They just have a great shooter. And part of what makes Chris Paul so effective, and part of the reason or how he would be so effective for this team, specifically in the second unit, is guys got to knock down their shots, and they're just not right now. I want to, I guess, talk about the elephant in the room that is Draymond Green. 5-game suspension. He puts Rudy Gobert in a chokehold in their recent game against the against the Minnesota Timberwolves. If you didn't see the clip, I don't know how you didn't see the clip, but if you didn't see the clip, Klay Thompson and Jaden McDaniels were getting in this scuffle. Mind you, this is the first 2 minutes of the game. Getting in this scuffle. They're, rummaging back and forth. Rudy comes over to kind of get Klay off of Jaden. Warriors fans are making the argument that Rudy put Klay in a headlock. It didn't really look like a headlock to me. He was behind him, but it looked like he more so put his hand on his chest and was pulling him back from his chest with his forearm across his chest. Dre comes out of nowhere, puts him in a headlock, drags him for 10 feet. Ends up suspended that game. Ends up ejected that game, suspended for 5 games. My question is this for Draymond. What does Draymond bring to the court other than antics anymore? What does Draymond truly bring to the court other than antics anymore? And the reason I ask this is because you can't, for the last couple of years, you can't look at Draymond Green's numbers and be like, oh, he's doing this, that, and the third because his numbers are X, Y, and Z. His numbers haven't been great for a while, just truthfully. In terms of scoring, whatever you want to look at. Scoring, rebounding to an extent, assists, all of his numbers are down. The shooting is surprisingly actually solid. He's 45% from 3. It's on 2 attempts a game, but somehow he's 45% from 3. I think Draymond just got to feel this team isn't good enough for him to be wilding like this anymore. It's just not. And it's weird that about a week and a half ago, Draymond Green, and I don't remember if it was a full-blown interview, in terms of podcasting wise, or was it just an interview after a game, but he was asked about does this team feel different than last year? And he essentially said yes, that the last year's team, the chemistry felt off, guys weren't bought in, and this year, it just feels better. Guys are more bought in. Mind you, this is back when the Warriors were, winning some games. They were on a nice little streak there. And I think that comes down to Draymond. The elephant in the room is the team was off last year because obviously the Jordan Poole stuff happened. Poole left, and sure, the team looks and feels better. They were asking him this when they were 1 and 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. They were 6 and 1. They were either 6 and 1 or 8 and 2 when they asked him this. This is when they were winning. Since then, they've lost 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 games in a row. And now it just doesn't look as good. The Warriors were starting out, and I don't even want to say the Warriors were starting out crazy hot, because some of those games were close. You got a 1-point win over Sacramento, 2-point win over OKC. They blew the doors off the Pelicans and the Rockets. I won't even say they blew the doors off the Rockets, but blew the doors off the Pelicans. But a lot of these wins are close games, and yes, the Warriors can win close games, and you got a decent a floor general like Chris Paul, Steph Curry, like I said, already said, having a great season. But Draymond's not, at least lately, to me, if this is indicative of the type of season you're going to have from Draymond Green, I think the Warriors are in for a long season. Just in terms of the off-court antics, the getting in the faces of other players, getting involved with other players. I know this is what he does, and I'm saying this now, and you're going to catch me probably in a month from now. I promise you, you're going to catch me in a month from now, 2 months from now, 3 months from now down the line in the regular season and saying, oh, I'm still a fan of Draymond because he's a great defender. Draymond, when he's locked in, is still a really good player. But stuff like this is just crazy. Stuff like this is just, it's too much. It's just too much. Steve Kerr, to an extent, I think enables a lot of Draymond's stuff. I remember when the Jordan Poole. Oh my God! How long I've been recording and it's not even been. Hopefully the audio from this has been fine. If it sounds weird for the last 15 minutes, it's because Hawk's mic was muted. But I don't think it was muted the whole time. I think it was just muted for this segment on the Warriors. But we keeping it real over here. We're not going back. Y'all got camera audio for a little bit. Back to what I was saying about Draymond Green and the Warriors was I think Steve Kerr enables him, like his stuff that he just does. We remember back when the Jordan Poole incident happened. Steve Kerr was more upset about the fact that video leaked out to the public than he was, or at least it seemed like he was more so upset that the fact that it leaked out to the public than the fact that it actually happened. He was talking about the brotherhood and how it's, that's something that was supposed to stay internally. And I think part of the reason that is because there's a very famous story that Steve Kerr and MJ got into it a little bit. And MJ punched Steve Kerr. Like, he's just used to that era of basketball. And I truly think, maybe not to that extent, stuff like that happens in the locker room. But I know teammates be getting into scuffles and at the very least pushing and shoving be happening in locker rooms all over the league. Like, I'm not saying this is a Warriors only thing. I'm not saying that was a Draymond only thing. I'm sure that happens. I'm sure it just don't get out. And I'm sure that's why Steve Kerr was mad. But Steve Kerr is coming across as an enabler. And I say this because when the Rudy Gobert thing happened, his wording and his response to it was, oh, well, the guys were telling me that Rudy had Clay in the chokehold first. And when Draymond stomped on Sabonis last year, I want to say, I can't remember if that was in the playoffs or on the regular season, but towards the end of the regular season, not the playoffs. When Draymond stomped on Sabonis last year, Steve Kerr's response was, oh, well, I didn't really see what happened. I didn't see it. Steve Kerr just comes across as an enabler for Draymond. And honestly, I get why he does it, because when Draymond's locked in, he's still a really good defender. Draymond last year was all defensive team. I want to say, if I'm not mistaken, on the top of my head, he was all defensive team last year. He was in the conversation for defensive player of the year last year. Like, when Draymond Green is locked in, he's still really good. The problem is not that he's not locked in all the time, but the problem is more so, I guess maybe on the outside looking in, it just looks like a lot. I'll say that. On the outside looking in, Draymond Green just looks like he's doing a lot. Yeah, all defensive second team last year. I know it wasn't crazy. The rest of the Warriors, I think they just got to figure it. Kuminga looks up and down at times. It's not necessarily been consistent for them, or not as consistent as I think that they would like. We talked about the playing slow. I think the Warriors really got to sit and evaluate what the season does for them, because Steph Curry's playing at such a high all-time level. I think in the back of specifically Klay Thompson's mind, I don't think he's necessarily worried about his contract. If you don't know, Klay Thompson's an unrestricted free agent this year, at the end of this summer. There haven't really been talks have stalled about an extension. Essentially, it's because the Warriors and Klay Thompson can't agree on a number, and they can't agree on the amount of years. I think Klay Thompson wants something that's similar to what Wiggins and Draymond Green got paid, which are 4-year deals. I think Draymond's was 4-year, 100, and Wiggins was like around that as well. They're making like $22 million a year. And Klay, the way you're starting this season out now, it don't look great. And I think the Warriors have to figure out what they're going to do in terms of how much do you want to try to continue to capitalize on the greatness that is Steph Curry. Mike Dunleavy, he has a lot to figure out. Bob Myers, he left at the right time. He said, I'm paying a couple people. I can't figure out how to play Klay Thompson this summer. I'm out. I'm washing my hands of this, and y'all can figure this out. Mike Dunleavy has to figure out what to do with Klay Thompson's contract, because if Wiggins is going to be doing this, whatever he's doing for the rest of the season, that's going to be a hard contract to move. I don't think you really can move Draymond because of the money he makes, and I don't know if other teams are going to value what he brings the way the Warriors do in terms of the trade market. So the only real flexibility that the Warriors have in terms of continuing to try to maximize it and build off of the Steph Curry, and maybe to try to squeeze another ring out of this, is potentially moving Klay. I don't think necessarily need to go that far in terms of the thought process, or in terms of what potential, where Klay Thompson can be next year or anything like that. So like I said, it's a lot of season left to play. It's just something to think about. Switching gears, I want to talk about a team that I have some serious hate in my heart for, but also a ton of respect because they play really, really good basketball, and that's the Boston Celtics. The Celtics made 2 really big moves this summer. Kristaps Porzingis and Jrue Holiday made some, which is crazy, Brad Stevens. People got on him for the trades he made. So far, they're looking amazing. Getting rid of Marcus Smart. Drew Holiday is looking absolutely fantastic. We'll talk about him in a second. Letting Malcolm Brogdon go, missing some of that off the bench production. Letting go of um, Robert Williams, which at the time, a lot of people were like, oh, they're really going to miss his rim protection. They're really going to miss his rim protection. It's crazy and it sucks for him. But not to say like the Celtics dodged a bullet. But recent reports, if you don't know, recent reports came out that Robert Williams, I want to say it's had to have season-ending surgery on his knee, and we're not going to see him for the rest of this season. So, obviously pray for a speedy recovery on his end. But it's crazy to say that the Celtics dodged a bullet here, but to an extent they did. I think the biggest additions, the biggest things that Drew Holiday and Kristaps Porzingis are bringing to this team is their defense. Drew Holiday, we talked about him when we were talking about the Bucks and how much the Bucks are missing his defense. But Drew Holiday screen, it sounds so stupid to talk about when you're really thinking about it out loud and really get and harp on it. But the next time you watch the Celtics, please watch them play defense. Because, and the reason it's so interesting to me adding Drew to specifically the Boston Celtics is the Celtics are notorious for loving drop coverage. I talked about it a ton in the year that they were against the finals, in the finals against the Boston Celtics, in the finals in 2022 against the Warriors. Jeez, clearly my brain's running out of words. One of the things I talked about a lot in those games were the Celtics were playing way too much drop coverage against Steph Curry. Like, they just love drop coverage. I get it to an extent. Like, Al Horford is not necessarily the fastest big when it comes to foot speed and trying to keep up with guards. Robert Williams, not necessarily the fastest big foot speed, trying to keep it up with guards. So I get it. You play drop coverage. They switch a lot. They've been a real switch heavy team in the past because you got to think Grant Williams, both Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, Marcus Smart. A lot of those guys, even Marcus Smart, I'm not tripping if I look at Marcus Smart as guarding a four, even if it's just for like a possession or two. I'm really not tripping. So they've had a very switch heavy off defense and a lot of drop coverage. They still have the ability to do some switches and they still switch at times, but now they don't have to switch as much because Drew Holiday, and shout out to Derek White because he's been surprising me how well he's been doing it too. I don't know if I've noticed him do it as much last year as I've noticed him do it this year, but their screen navigation to be able to just blow up pick and rolls has been fantastic, which allows Al Horford and Kristaps Porzingis to stay in that drop coverage and protect the rim and watch the big as he's rolling to the basket because his guards are doing a great job of staying with their man. Or at the very least, if they getting behind their man, staying on their hip, and being able to get back into play and make that a contested shot if that offensive player decides to shoot a midi or pull up for three, they're making and take tough shots and blowing up those types of plays. Drew has been fantastic. Offensively, it's interesting to see Drew Holiday almost look and feel like he's being reverted back to a role player because honestly, in this offense, he's most nights the fourth option, which is crazy. Think seeing him coming back down from being the second or third option, depending if Chris Middleton was healthy on the floor or not. We're talking about a guy who just the last 2-3 years was at 18, 19, 20 points a game. And now he's, I think, at 14, I want to say I saw 13, 14 points, but still having the ability and the skill and the respect of the defense to be like, we can't just ignore him because he can go get a bucket if we leave him wide open. Kristaps has been absolutely fantastic. I've loved as much as I love the defense he's brought to this team, the rim protection has been solid. Truthfully, I think I forget. We talk about Wemby and Chet in terms of these 7'2", 7'3", 7'4" guys. I think a lot of times, even myself, I forget that Kristaps Porzingis is about, I want to say he's listed at 7'2". I forget that Kristaps Porzingis is listed at 7'2" until I'm out there watching it. I'm like, yo, he really is towering over a lot of people. He's only averaging a block a game, but when he's deterring a lot of shots at the rim, he's playing good defense on a lot of shots at the rim. But offensively, he's bringing them stuff that they haven't had before. The pick and rolls have been great. The pick and pops have been great. The pick and roll to like the mid-range area, the pump fake, put the ball on the floor, go to the basket. He's been solid in the post. And he looks good because he's not the number one option. He recently said in an interview that he's excited and enjoying being the third or fourth option. He's thriving in being the third or fourth option. Because if the starter's on the court, you're not doubling down on Kristaps Porzingis, because that means you're either leaving Drew Holiday, Jason Tatum, or Jaylen Brown open. You're not doubling down on those off of those guys. At most, you're going to double off of Drew, and Drew can still knock down a catch and shoot open three, and he's not a bad off ball mover. The Celtics are just really, really good. Like, the Celtics are really, really good. And also, I got to show some love. Once again, this is a guy who I didn't get a chance to look the numbers up before I decided to shoot this, but I've seen him do it at least 3 games this season. Jason Tatum is a closer. And not in the sense that I think that if you weren't watching the game, you might not pick up on it. If you just go to his stats, they're not necessarily, what are considered clutch time buckets, last 5 minutes within 5 points. But it might be more like fourth quarter just started, the game's still close. Jason Tatum hits 2 threes, gets to the basket, gets and 1 foul. Next, Jason Tatum has 11 in the fourth, and now the Celtics are up 13 and the game's over. Like, they've ended a lot of games like that. Shoot, they ended a game like that against my Sixers the other night, where the game was close. And Jason Tatum said, the game's not close anymore. Like, I've seen him do it time and time again this season. My mind will always go back to game 6, round 2 at home against the Celtics, where he was having a horrible game and then blew up in that fourth quarter. I like the Celtics a lot. And I hate that I like the Celtics this much. I ain't even gonna lie. I hate that I like the Celtics this much. But I got immense respect because they're a really, really good ball club. Really, really good ball club. Moving on from them, I want to talk about the Suns. It's one of the last of the major moves that we wanted to talk about. Like, last major move of the stuff that happened this offseason that I wanted to talk about. The Suns. The Phoenix Suns. They're 6-6, which, all things considered, ain't bad. Devin Booker's played in 4 games. Bradley Beal's played in 3 games. Devin Booker's played in 4 games. Bradley Beal will now be out another 3 weeks, at least, for reevaluation. He's having these back spasm issues. And I was spinning, first off, if you still listen to this late into the pod, you're a real one. But secondly, if you listen to this late in the pod, and I was looking for like 30 minutes. I think these back issues with Beal are new. I was trying to see why he was out, because he missed some time last year during some stints. From what I can tell, I don't think it was back stuff. From what I can tell, he hurt his back during training camp or preseason, and it's just been downhill ever since. And one thing about back injuries is they don't go away easily. Like, we're seeing it with Ben Simmons. He's out again, suffering with this nerve stuff in his leg, all tied to his back. A lot of people were worried about Michael Porter Jr. He missed like a year and a half due to his back. He's, knock on wood, he's been great for the Nuggets since then, and we haven't really had any issues. But he missed like a year and a half because of his back. That was one of the things people worried about him coming into the league. Back injuries in the NBA, in any sport really, are really tough to navigate, just because you got to think, working your regular 9 to 5, if my back hurt, I'm jacked up for the day. But he's out with back spasms. Booker's only played 4 games, but when in the games he's been in, the Suns are 3-1. Kevin Durant's been absolutely fantastic. Kevin Durant has been absolutely fantastic this season. Kevin Durant does so far this season: 30 points a game, 52% from the field, 50% from 3, 86% from the free throw line. Absolutely fantastic. And I'm not, how can I say this? I'm not too worried about this Suns team, mainly because it's injuries. And there's honestly nothing you can do about injuries. We knew how this team was constructed, that all 3 of these guys were going to have to play great for them to be successful. And they just haven't played together. All 3 of those guys haven't played a regular season minute together. They haven't played a game together. All 3 of them. And at least we won't see it for another 3 weeks because now Booker's out. But we saw last year, Beal and Kevin Durant, they're good enough to keep this ship alive. They're going to score enough to keep the ship alive. Because a lot of the times in some of the games that the Suns lost in the 6-6, especially when it was just Kevin Durant out there, the game would be close all game, where the Suns might even be up for most of the game. But when it comes down to the fourth quarter, the Suns and honestly even Kevin Durant were struggling a little bit because the defense knows, oh, it's the fourth quarter now. We're sending two. We're sending two. We're sending two. So the Suns were struggling in the fourth quarter of a lot of these games and ended up losing a couple of close ones. With Booker coming back into the fold and being there on the court, I don't think they're going to run into that same issue. Just because KD is going to have another guy on the court. Like, he's just going to have an outlet. It's going to be another guy who can create and get his own shot up. When it's just KD out there, it is just KD out there. No disrespect to the role players that they got on the court. Grayson Allen's been solid. Eric Gordon's been solid. Like they've been solid. Some of the guys have been solid. They're just, the way the team is conducted, they're not meant to step up to the extent of, yo, now you're the starter and you're playing 35 minutes a night and we need about 22 from you. Like, they're just not going to be those guys. The role players they have on this team are simply not those guys. I've been personally extremely disappointed in the use of Nurkic so far this season. He had a solid start. Part of my disappointment is I picked him up on fantasy late in the draft. I was like, oh, that's a nice little pickup. You know what I mean? I thought I was going to have something there. Been horrible. Not horrible, but just disappointing. Right now, he's averaging 8 and 9, 40% from the field, 23% from 3 on 2 attempts a game. Which is weird because he shot 36% last year on 3 attempts a game. But the year before that, he was 26%. But that's also the year that Dame was out. So I'm hoping, my hope at least for Nurkic is once Booker's in and as he continues to play, once they get Beal back, that Nurkic will look better. But in the same breath, Nurkic, he started every game so far, but he's not closed out every game. They've closed out a lot of games with Drew Eubanks because Drew Eubanks is out playing Nurkic. I don't think Nurkic has been the defensive-minded center that they thought he was going to be when they made the trade for him. I still don't think that trade was a failed trade on the Suns' part. I think they made that trade because they felt, and DeAndre Ayton felt, that relationship was just not salvageable. And so they had to do something. Because there have been times, them first couple of games, Nurkic was making some passes. He was catching on a roll, being that connector piece that I love centers. And I've said this before. I love centers that can roll and, distribute the ball a little bit. But I haven't seen that from Nurkic yet. At least in the last, after like game 4, it's really been downhill for Yusuf Nurkic. The silver lining, and then we'll move on from the Suns, because outside of the injuries, there really ain't much to say other than Kevin Durant's been great. The silver lining for them is this year isn't a bust year. This isn't a championship or bust year for them. It ain't. Kevin Durant's still on for 2 more years. He's a free agent in 2026. Booker's still on for 4 more years. He's a free agent in 2024. And Beal is 2 more years in the player option. So he might be here to 2027, 2026 at the earliest. So they have at least 2 more full years of this unit. Now, that could be good or bad, especially if Bill's back injury continues on, and we know Kevin Durant's injury history, things like that. But, knock on wood, hope everybody's healthy. There's no real reason to panic if you're a Suns fan. Obviously, you want to win as many games as possible, and you want your players to be healthy, but there's really no reason to panic. All right, shifting gears, I want to talk about the Chicago Bulls and why it's time for them to blow it up. Bulls right now are currently 5-9. They're 3-7 in their last 10. They won the other night against the Magic. I'm sorry. They definitely lost against the Magic. They won against the Heat. They lost back-to-back games against the Magic. They did beat the Pistons, but they lost against the Bucks, lost against the Suns. They beat the Jazz, lost against the Nuggets, lost against the Nets, lost against the Mavericks. Somehow they beat the Pacers, but then once again lost to the Pistons, lost to the Thunder. Like, the losses that they're taking against teams like the Pistons, against teams like the Magic back-to-back, those are just really, really bad losses, because you're going to lose the games against the Bucks. You're going to lose the games against the Nuggets. The Nets games was a competitive one, like as it should have been. And the Raptors win was a competitive one, as it should have been. But I don't think the future of this Bulls team is bright. And recent reports came out that the Bulls are exploring what trades should be like. Like I said, I can't remember if the Zach LaVine officially came out and said he's requested a trade, but reports are definitely out that the Bulls are, at the very least, answering the phone. At the very least, I believe they're answering the phone. So I wanted to take a look. The Athletic put out an interesting article talking about some potential trades. I don't love all of these trades. I'm going to keep it a beam. But I wanted to check it out and let's have a conversation. The first one they will talk about, and this is the one I'm probably the most against, is the Philadelphia 76ers. I don't want Zach LaVine on the Sixers. If you for some context, let me just tell you what type of player Zach LaVine is, so you know what we're talking about. Because I think this might be controversial. I think Zach LaVine. I don't want to say the word. The word isn't overrated. The word is just I don't know how much Zach LaVine moves the needle for a lot of teams, depending on what they're looking for, unless they're looking for a very specific thing. Zach LaVine this season, 21 a game, 34% from three, 42% from the field. Uh, that's basically it. 3 assists, a steal. Like, he's not necessarily a great playmaker. We know he's not there necessarily for his defense. Zach LaVine is what I think of when I think of a prototypical shooting guard that's there to get buckets. He's going to knock down the ball at a high clip. 34% is super low for him. Last year, 34. Last year was 37. The year before that, 38. The year before that, 41. The year before that, 38 on 7, 8 attempts. Like, he's a great shooter. So 34% feels a little low. I think part of that could just be, hey, the team ain't great, so defenses is on you. Uh, I'm not saying Zach is bad. I want to make that clear. I'm not saying Zach is bad. I just don't know how much he moves the needle for all of these teams. So the Sixers trade would look like Marcus Morris, Nicholas Batum, Robert Covington, Jaden Springer, 2 first-round picks. The reason I don't want the Sixers to do this trade is because this trade kind of locks you in. Like, this trade locks us in as our team now is Zach LaVine, Tyrese Maxey, and Joel Embiid. Like, that's our core. I don't know if I love that core, especially considering how well Tyrese Maxey has been balling. Honestly, how well Kelly Oubre was balling before he got injured. Still praying for a speedy recovery for him. Being hit by a car as a pedestrian is insane. So prayers out to him and his family and a speedy recovery for sure. But he was hooping. Like, legitimately, he was hooping. At one point, we had 4 guys averaging 20 like through the first 8 games of the season. I think I said this earlier. Kelly was at 20 a game on some really solid shooting. My honest and true question is, how much more is, like, if Kelly's at like 18 or 16 right now. He had a stinker where he had like 8, and he had another stinker where he had like 9. So it brought his averages down a little bit. But before those last couple of games, how much more was Zach LaVine going to do than Kelly Oubre? In terms of just a guy on the court that's going to get you a bucket, I don't love that trade. Moving on. The Los Angeles Lakers. This is one I think that makes more sense, only specifically because the Lakers need this type of player. The Sixers don't need a guy that's going to go out and get you a bucket, per se. In my mind, they don't. The trade here is D'Angelo Russell, Rui Hachimura, Taurean Prince, and Jalen Hood-Schifino, and an unprotected first-round pick. Now, not as many picks as the Phillies offers could look like, but I'm really hoping Philly don't make that offer. I like this trade a lot for the Lakers because they need some scoring. They need somebody who's going to do something when LeBron James not on the court. They need somebody who can go get their own bucket. We know Zach LaVine can do that. He's a guy who can go get a bucket. This moves the needle a lot more for the Los Angeles Lakers. The only problem is this trade can't happen until January 15th because Hachimura isn't available to be moved until January 14th. If you move Hachimura with Gabe Vincent, like if take Rui Hachimura out the trade and put in Gabe Vincent, the trade can happen in December. It just really just depends on what the Bulls want. I like that trade a little bit more. For the Bulls and the Lakers. Mainly for the Lakers. I like that trade a little bit more. Golden State Warriors. Zach LaVine for Chris Paul, Jonathan Kuminga, and a first-round pick. If I'm the Bulls, I am not doing this one. You get a project in Jonathan Kuminga. I want to say Chris Paul is still under contract, if I'm not mistaken. Paul deal structure the team can have him for $30 million for the next year or waive him with no financial commitment the year after that. So $30 million next year, or you can waive him. The Bulls, I guess the thought process is Zach's still under contract for a couple more years. He's making $40 to $45 million a year for the next 2 years, maybe 3. He has a player option in 2027. So you're just getting off the money faster. I can see that for the Bulls. So far, my ideal locations for Zach LaVine in the trade in terms of how much he can help that team, not necessarily how great that trade is for the Bulls. And I think a lot of times when we talk about trades, we get so excited in how a player can impact the team he's going to go to that we forget that the team traded him away got to want the trade. I like the Heat trade for the Bulls. It's Zach LaVine for Kyle Lowry. Their rookie, Jamie Jasquez Jr., Nikola Jovic, Orlando Robinson, Kyle Lowry's coming off the last year of his deal, so he'd be a free agent at the end of this year, get that money off the books. JJJ's been fantastic for the Heat, so you got a nice young player to continue to build. Look forward to the future. Get a first round pick. I like that for the Bulls. I like it for the Heat because once again, what do we always say? What have I been saying for the last 3 off seasons that the Heat need? Some offense. Now, what does that lineup? Do you bring Tyler Hero back off the bench now? Do you run some interesting lineup of Tyler Hero, Jimmy Butler, and Zach LaVine on the court at the same time? That's something I'll leave the Eric Spoelstra to figure out. I like the idea of Tyler Hero potentially coming back to his bench role, but also in the same breath, Tyler Hero and Zach LaVine, quiet as kept, ain't like I'll say Zach's better than Tyler Hero. My question is how much? It ain't that much. Like it ain't that much. To me, at least, it ain't that much. The New York Knicks trade, they had a trade for the Knicks here. I like the idea of it. But personally, I don't think the Knicks are going to trade for Zach LaVine. I think the Knicks are at least holding out to see how the rest of the league shapes out. The Timberwolves maybe decide to move Karl Anthony Towns. Timberwolves look fantastic right now, but hey, February is still months away. Evan Fournier, Dante DiVincenzo, Emmanuel quickly in a first round pick. This trade can't be happening to the 15th due to restrictions on DiVincenzo. I honestly, this would be if the Bulls believe in Emmanuel quickly, which I think he's been really, really good. I think Quickly's been solid this season. He's a restricted free agent this offseason. So their Bulls would have to, give him a bag and pay him if they want to keep him. But I like the idea of if they believe in Emmanuel Quickly, I like the idea because I've liked what I've seen from Quickly so far, but it really just depends if the Bulls believe in Quickly. Rest of the trades, I ain't gonna hold you. I don't love, so we're not gonna go too deep into them. The only other trade I thought that was really interesting from the Bull side of things, I don't know if the Raptors would do it, but it was the Toronto Raptors. Gary Trent Jr., Thaddeus Young, Otto Porter Jr., and 2 first-round picks. Mainly because a lot of the expiring salary, and you get 2 first-round picks. It's great for the Bulls. I don't know if Toronto would like to do that. That's mainly if Toronto, in my mind, is believing in the Scotty Barnes future and really decided to just move forward with that. I think you make that trade, keep Scotty Barnes, keep Zach, and I wouldn't be surprised if we look up and Pascal's on a different team. Overall, all in all, I think it is time though for the Bulls and to move in a different direction, to go in a different direction. They've been a team that has some players who making a decent amount of money and just haven't really been that good. And they have the type of players that I think a lot of teams would give a couple of picks for. Like you can get probably 2 picks for Zach LaVine. You can get a pick or 2, depending on the team, for Alex Caruso. You might think that sounds crazy, but that's just how good of a defender and role player he is. I don't know how much you're going to get for DeMar DeRozan. Not necessarily saying DeMar DeRozan is bad, just with the combination of age and the type of player he is. You have to be a very specific team to be able to fit DeMar DeRozan in your team, simply because he refuses to shoot a 3-pointer. Vucevic, you might be stuck with for a little bit unless the team gets desperate and really needs a center. I'm looking at you, Memphis, although Bismack Biyombo's been solid for them, or someone like, mainly Memphis. Or I just think it's time. Honestly, I just think it's time for the Bulls to move on, and I'm looking forward to seeing whatever the heck they decide to do. All right, last but not least, I want to talk about the in-season tournament. Most teams have already played 2 of their group play games. Pretty much every team actually has played at least 2 of their group play games. Most or a lot have played their 3rd group play game. There are 4 group play games if you don't know, and for the most part, I'm enjoying it. And it's not in the sense that these games, when I'm watching it, feel heightened or feel like this increased level of competitiveness, at least not yet. I like the different courts. I like the different jerseys. The gray courts I don't love. My favorite courts of the in-season courts are the full color courts, like the Sixers. The Pelicans have a full color court. The Lakers have a full color court. I'm sure I'm forgetting a lot, but those are just some off the top of my head that I know I literally just watched this past Friday. I like the idea of an in-season tournament. I like the idea of on a Tuesday night, on a Friday night, there's mad games on for me to watch. Personally, selfishly, I wish it might have been like a Thursday night in-season night, but I get NBA doesn't want to clash with football and the NFL. Because sometimes on a Friday night, I'd be like, are we going out? Am I inside, outside? Anyway, I think what'll catapult the in-season tournament to be actually something in fans' eyes, because Steph Curry had this interesting quote that went viral like last week of when people are asking him or saying they don't understand the in-season tournament or what is this in-season tournament, they don't get it. And Steph's response was basically like, at this point, do you not get it or you just not want to Google it? Because it is, if you sit down for 2 minutes to just Google it, it's fairly easy to understand. I'm not going to explain it all right now, but in the same breath, I'm not mad at fans who haven't taken the time to Google it because it's new. It's new. You're like, what is this? This don't even count. You might feel like you're just making up a trophy. All of those feelings are valid in my mind. I think what will solidify the in-season tournament as at the very least, a solid additional piece of entertainment is that championship game. We really got to wait and see what Vegas looks like. We got to wait and see what teams end up in that championship game. How they handle I guess we'll say the pomp and circumstance, the entertainment side of the in-season tournament. I'm sure there'll be, I don't know exactly what, but I know they're going to be something. Like, what does the trophy presentation look like? What does the trophy itself look like? What do the courts look like? All of those things, to an extent, help in the entertainment value of basketball, and I think it'll help in the entertainment value of this in-season tournament. But ultimately, it's going to come down to what two teams do we get in the finals, and how seriously do they take it. And for the most part, for the in-season tournament, I think teams are taking it seriously because it counts as a regular season game. I'm curious because the only game that doesn't count, I know I said I wasn't going to explain it, but the only game that doesn't count is the championship game, the last game of the tournament towards the regular season. That's the game where you got that extra, and Adam Silver's words, economic incentive, which I thought was a nice way of saying you getting an extra check. So we'll see. That is going to be the only thing I think that will decide if this tournament sticks. And 1 year is not going to decide it. The NBA, I think, is really going to have to buy into this and do this for like 4 or 5 years, very similar to how they did the East versus the draft style of All-Star game. We did that for like 3 years. I want to say it might have been 3 or 4 years, to be completely honest with you. I can't remember on top of my head. It might have been 3 because I think it was 2020. Yeah, it was 2020. And now they're back to East versus West because they didn't love it. And we'll just have to wait and see how this in-season tournament goes. But so far, I'm enjoying it. I'm curious if most fans are. I don't know if most fans are. Like when I'm checking Twitter and stuff, the night of a in-season tournament game, I don't really see people referring to it as like, oh, that was a great tournament game. That was just a good game for X, Y, or Z. But that's all I have for you guys today. Once again, like I always say, if you've made it this far, you truly are a real one. We had some audio issues there. Like we're going to see how long it was. If I'm not mistaken, it was about 10 minutes of camera audio, but then we went right back to the mic. I'm almost certain we started the podcast with the mic. If not, hey, it's my first one in 3 weeks. Appreciate you for watching. I'll catch you in the next one. Hopefully it's not another 3 weeks from now. I'm out. Peace.